Is here. I'm going to start this video over again, and I want you to well, I want to play this for you. Yeah, I made bongs out of all that bamboo that grows here on the Texas golf courses. Here. Okay, where are we at here? Okay, we're recording that. Let's do this.
He took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States of America. By some, he's been called controversial.
I'll keep my freedom, I'll keep my guns, try to keep my money and my religion too.
Now, keep in mind that some of my guests have been approached by Homeland Security or FBI saying, why are you going on the Clay Douglas show?
My message to those guys, if they're listening this morning, is go get a cup of coffee. Maybe you'll learn something.
We both took the same oath, to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I don't recall there being an expiration date on that.
I'm gonna keep my big VA, keep my friends the same, keep the government out of my business, and y'all can keep the change.
He is the free American, Clay Douglas.
We know what we need. We know who to blame.
Catch the Free American Hour, weekdays at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern.
I'll keep the USA and y'all can keep the change.
For the podcast and more details, visit www.freeamerican.com or catch the podcast by phone by calling 832-999-8621.
All right, you've heard about Jade Helm. I mean, the city council invited them in, at least here in Big Springs. Maybe it was just a coincidence that it happened shortly after I moved here. I moved to Big Springs, trying to get set up here, got my office set up here, and then suddenly Jade Helm shows up. Jade Helm shows up. And of course, we also had the second attack on Waco, this one on bikers, not just children. Decided to pick on some adults here. And they killed 9 motorcycle riders, not gang members. They might have been in a club, they might have been wearing their colors, might have been something like that. But they wanted you to, they are afraid of the bikers. And I've been a biker. My first club went to the Banditos 45 years or so ago, maybe 50, almost 50. And they were afraid of us then. We all had guns, we all had arms, and we weren't afraid to fight if the occasion arose. But this Jade Helm has been another farce as far as our media is concerned. The bikers probably didn't shoot anyone. They didn't kill anyone. The bikers were killed by the police, who had pre-positioned snipers on the roof of the restaurant next door. And they allowed a bar fight escalate. Maybe somebody fired a gun. Maybe one of the undercover officers fired a gun after during the barroom brawl. That's all it was. And they've made this barroom brawl into a thing on the bikers. The FBI is actually trying to examine anyone that's got a motorcycle license there. That's just coming up here. We'll tell you more about that shortly. And again, this is they're doing the same thing to the bikers that they did to us, to me, when I started the militias. The militia is not any terrorist group. The militia is you, the people. It's we, the people. Every able-bodied man between the ages of 18 and 45. They tried to criminalize the militia. Clay Douglas started the militia in New Mexico. Yes, sir. I did that, and I did it in the governor's office. That governor just ran for president, Governor Gary Johnson. He ran for president in the last election. But you, dumb son of a bitches, elected Obama. Well, maybe you didn't. Maybe I'm being unfair. You didn't know about anybody. What choice did you have, Obama or Songbird McCain? No. Your leaders are selected. They are selected by, they have to be willing to sell out this country, and believe me, I have been in a presidential race. I traveled coast to coast with the first Republican to sign up for the presidency in 1996. His name was Charles Collins. He was a good friend. He was a good man. He was a Rhodes Scholar, and didn't have a lot of backing. But you probably never heard of him, because every time he got up on the stage in the Republican Party to tell you that we could buy back the Federal Reserve, we could wipe out a $6 trillion debt, which is doubled now, more than doubled. We could wipe that debt out under their own rules, buy it back under their own rules. But you never saw him, because every time he got on stage, every cameraman on stage from the mainstream media pointed their cameras at the ground and took a smoke break. So you never knew Charles Collins was running. We'd get there the night before, we'd put up Collins for president, right beside Bob Dole for president, right beside Pat Buchanan for president, right beside Alan Keyes for president. By the next morning, every one of those signs were gone. Gone. So no camera caught the name Charles Collins. So nobody was asking, gee, who's this Charles Collins? Unless you were reading the Free American magazine. Now, flash forward, they tried to demonize the militia. And by the way, that militia was started after what happened at Waco the first time. And the media did the same thing. They wanted to convince you that somehow the BATF, a bunch of criminals, had to go in there and kill all of those children and their families to save them from a child molester. I was stunned. So I started my own media. I started the Free American, this radio show, that magazine. The magazine's still available. You can still get it for $2.99. It used to be $5. Now you can get it for $2.99 at shop.freeamerican.com. Now, I've also suggested that just perhaps this whole Jade Helm thing might be God's gift to us. It might be a good thing. It might be a good thing because it's making you aware something's wrong. Troops on the street, is that right? Militarization of our police officers, is that right? So suddenly what used to be written off as a conspiracy theory, somehow that is coming to the limelight. And we're not so crazy after all. Perhaps. We are seeing history in the making now. For 20 years, I've been telling you, what the aftermath of Waco was, what they were planning on doing to us. The Waco was just a start, and their attacks on me consider me the canary in the coal mine. I'm a biker. I started the militias. I'm a reporter. I'm a filmmaker. And right at the time they tried to kill me, May 20th, 2004, I had just come out with a true face of FEMA that's still available at shop.freeamerican.com. The true face of FEMA. I filmed the first Homeland Security meeting where FEMA had been rolled into Homeland Security, and Colonel John Brinkerhoff was lecturing law enforcement in Albuquerque at Sandia Labs at Kirtland Air Force Base, where all your nukes are stored, by the way. And we're in for a long war, he tells us. Might go longer than the Cold War. And unlike other wars, this was going to be fought on American soil. Now, this is over 10 years ago I made this. The war is going to be fought on American soil, and the enemy's weak. The enemy doesn't have planes, it doesn't have tanks, it doesn't have any of this crap. So they're going to use unconventional means. We have to use unconventional means. And if there's an atomic attack or a disaster of significant magnitude, like an earthquake along the New Madrid fault line, we'll need 400,000 well-armed, well-trained, organized, disciplined troops to control the American people, because some of them just won't follow orders. That's right. Some of us won't line up on the Walmart parking lot to get a vaccination that's going to give us a disease, smallpox in this case, that's been eradicated in this country for 100 years. Oh, but it'll only give you a mild case of this disease. Yep, some of us won't do that, Colonel Brinkerhoff. And that brings us to Jade Helm. History in the making. Since the revelations regarding the intrusiveness and the scope of Jade Helm, many now believe this country is plunging headfirst into a state of revolution, civil war. The case for civil war. And I don't like the term revolution. I am not a rebel. I am the most pro-government guy you got out there. Pro-government, yes, sir. I believe, as Benjamin Franklin said, when asked, "What form of government have you wrought for us, Mr. Franklin?" he said, "A constitutional republic, ma'am, if you can keep it." That's where we are here. Now, Dave Hodges says, how many of you believe that a planned currency collapse coupled with the implementation of a brutal martial law and gun confiscation will be the trigger events that will incite the coming revolution? Now, this remains the leading candidate for the unfolding of a civil war. On May 24th, Hodges said, I interviewed Stuart Rhodes of the Oath Keepers, who won't come on my show because Stuart Rhodes is Jewish and he doesn't want to hear the truth. He doesn't want to deal with it. He won't come on my show. But he believes that an economic collapse will set off the conflict, and he also believes, as Hodges says he does, that ISIS, which also stands for, folks, the Israeli Secret Intelligence Service, that ISIS will wreak havoc in this country the midst of the chaos caused by the failure of the dollar. We both believe that under the cover of the chaos, we will see political dissidents extracted as per the intent of the Jade Helm exercise. It will be at this point that sides will be definitely drawn in the upcoming conflict. Now, many of us in the independent media And I am the independent media, folks, and have been for over 20 years. And that's why I'm telling you, you need to go out there. You need to get some of the Free Americans. You need to get my books. You need to understand the Mystery Babylon, the New World Order Unveiled, will tell you exactly how they operate, exactly how they came after me, exactly what happened when they tried to kill me. And it'll be at this point that the sides will be definitively drawn in the upcoming conflict. Many of us in the independent media believe this is the likely scenario that will soon turn this country into the most dangerous country on the face of the earth. Now, I don't agree totally with everything Dave Hodges has said here, because I believe we're already the most dangerous country out there. You just had 9 bikers killed who had never done anything. No charges, the only thing they were charged with was wearing their colors, their patch on their back. Now, it might behoove us to look a little closer at the nature of the revolution in order to predict where all of this is likely headed. Hodges says, although I personally oppose the use of violence as a political tool, in the present political climate, I see no way to stem the tide of unthinkable brutality and violence which seems imminent. It is in this mindset that I set about to research the topic of revolution, and this series of articles reflects the results of the research. As a result of the past and common patterns of evolution, it appears as if a clear picture is beginning to emerge. Whether or not we choose to admit where Jade Helm will take us, the government is already practicing for what appears to be likely. On March 27th, under the auspices of DHS, Department of Homeland Security, Special Operations Forces practiced the political dissident extraction drills in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Many people took this as a personal declaration of war against the American people. In an email from a force Lieutenant General retiree courtesy of President Obama's, he provided some clues on where he believes the coming conflict is headed. And again, you need to get my film True Face of FEMA to see this is exactly what I told you about when I filmed the first Homeland Security meeting. This is exactly where I told you it was headed. This Lieutenant General, who is not named, says that with a modern anti-aircraft system, mobile and man-portable, air power will be all but useless. What we will see is a ground war, city by city, street by street. Additionally, what is coming will be unlike any civil war in history. It will be very personal. The government will call the Patriot forces traitors and terrorists. They will arrest, intern, torture, murder suspected terrorist families. This will result in bloody reprisals which will start a cycle lasting for years. A vicious cycle lasting for years. What kind of conflict is being described here? In order to answer that question, we must first examine the 4 levels of warfare. 4 levels of warfare. Most military strategists identify 4 levels of conflict. Nuclear war is the trump card of all conflict. Conventional warfare is number 2. 3 is guerrilla warfare, and 4 is terrorism. Now remember, you may not know this, your neighbors certainly won't know this, but there's already been a nuclear attack on America. It was at the World Trade Center. Those buildings were brought down by specialized nukes planted in the buildings, probably as they were built. And of course, this I referred to it as an exaggerated case of Jewish lightning. The Mossad had a part in it. The guys that were high-fiving it over in New Jersey were Mossad. So it's safe to say that if our country does indeed descend into revolution, nuclear war will not come into play, for if it did, there'd be nothing to rule over in the aftermath. The United States has already witnessed civil war of a conventional nature. In the 1860s, two mighty armies of that era locked horns in what proved to be the conflict in which America suffered her greatest loss of life. In the Civil War, both sides had equivalent weaponry and as a result employed conventional tactics. Initially, the coming Civil War could very well consist of one American unit facing off against another, as we saw in the Civil War. However, the losing side would quickly resort to use guerrilla warfare tactics. At the present time, given the disparity of technology and resources between the people, the globalist-controlled forces of the government, a conventional war would prove to be a disaster for the rebel forces. The likely mode of the Revolutionary War conflict facing the people of the United States is that it will consist of either guerrilla warfare or terrorism. And Dave here has kindly put up some pictures of the paper targets used by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, purchased by the Department of Homeland Security and Police. And one of these paper targets is a beautiful, pregnant, white woman, a young child, probably 14, carrying a gun, and a grandmother in her house robe with a gun. You are the terrorist the Department of Homeland Security has been practicing. Terrorism is the least preferred option by any insurgent group. But terrorism, there's absolutely no hope of final victory because the territory is never occupied. For that reason, nobody aspires to engage in terrorism if they have a viable alternative. And the American people do have a choice given how well armed we are. However, terrorism arising out of a defeated guerrilla force is a distinct possibility, as it would represent American guerrillas' fallback position should they be defeated. Consequently, does the MIAC report, which labeled libertarians, constitutionalists, Second Amendment supporters, Ron Paul supporters, veterans, and now Christians as domestic terrorists, make a little more sense as to why DHS made these bold proclamations? DHS understands and has demonstrated their understanding of these facts and has also prepared for what I just wrote about in the previous paragraph. The Veterans Administration estimates there are approximately 21.5 million veterans living in the United States. We also live in a country with over 300 million privately owned guns. These combined factors clearly point to a guerrilla war being preferred and necessary mode of combat, which will likely be visited upon this country. Shades of Vietnam. Vietnam was our first guerrilla warfare. That's because the women and children were all fighting to remove us, brought in by the Lion Gulf of Tonkin incident. And so they were fighting on the streets. They were getting rid of American fighters. And that's how they were able to kill 58,000 of my brothers there. Now, the good news for future American freedom fighters is that the guerrilla war has been getting more successful since 1945. But unfortunately, guerrilla fighters still lose most of the time. An analysis of past conflicts featuring guerrilla war reveals that only 25% of guerrilla forces out of the 443 such conflicts in 1775 were successful. The government prevailed almost 64% of the time, with the remainder of the conflicts ended in stalemate. Conversely, since the end of World War II, the percentage of success for guerrilla forces has indeed gone up by 39.6%. Yet that still means the government forces have continued to prevail 51% of the time. When the American people engage in a guerrilla war in the upcoming years, the people have less than a 40% chance of success. However, if some retired military leadership estimates are correct, a sizable number of U.S. troops will join the American people and thus greatly enhance the chances of success. Now, guerrilla wars are rarely short, and as a result do not favor the American culture and our collective psyche of instant gratification. When Americans flip the switch on the wall, they expect the light to come on. Will Americans set aside their entitlements as well as their entrenched soft lifestyle and rise to the occasion? Only time will tell. The Vietnamese culture, with an external locus of control predominating the people, where the group is more important than the individual, is the perfect mindset for guerrilla fighters. This could prove to be the American rebels' biggest challenge, because guerrilla warfare is not something that one does like driving over a speed bump. And it is a way of life, a very hard way of life, with misery, extreme sacrifice, and unspeakable losses. Hang on, Truth Radio, Crusade Radio. I'll be right back. And for you here, what do we got?
Hello, friends. This is RJ, the Mighty Phoenix. Friends, if you're a business owner and need capital to sustain or accentuate your business, and if you've been in business for 2 years or more, and your credit scores are low as 500, I can help you. Credit scores don't pay back with money that you borrow. Credit scores are only weapons being used against you in the war on small business. You pay back money that you borrow with business money earned. So if you have 6 recent bank statements and your business is active, and as I said, you've been in business for over 2 years, I can get you money within 8 business days. Contact me at R as in Russell, J as in James, P as in Peter, P as in Peter again, A as in Arthur, P as in Peter again, A as in Arthur, at yahoo.com. That's RJPPA at yahoo.com. And if you're not in business and you need to earn extra cash and you don't want to go out and work for someone who's going to take advantage of you, or you don't want to spend the money to gas and get paid minimum wage, you can work with me, not for me, and earn big commissions. And all you need to do is place ads on the computer, on the internet, on Craigslist, on Backpage, on other sites, in the financial section. Only 15 minutes a day. Again, contact me at rjppaa@yahoo.com. Leave your cell phone number. I'll get back to you within 24 hours. And we'll discuss the issue. I can help you. Again, rjppaa@yahoo.com. Have a great day, folks.
up here. Headed back in here into the studio. Got the coffee going. Here, where are we at here? Everything's still working over here on YouTube. Alright, and just in case you don't understand what I'm doing right here, you make this little sign. This is a magic sign. This is an occult sign to redirect the energy and affect the molecules in my coffee to get it to spin it in the right direction so that it's healthy for you, as opposed to that crap that comes out of your water pipe. All right. Since the end of World War II, the percentage of success for guerrilla forces has indeed gone up by 39.6%, yet that still means that the government forces have continued to prevail 51% of the time. When the American people engage in a guerrilla war in the upcoming years, the people have less than a 40% chance of success. However, if retired military leadership estimates are correct, a sizable number of U.S. troops will join the American people, thus greatly enhancing the chances of success. Guerrilla wars are rarely short and as a result do not favor the American culture and our collective psyche of instant gratification. When Americans flip the switch on the wall, we expect the light to come on. And will Americans set aside their entitlements as well as their entrenched soft lifestyle and rise to the occasion? Only time will tell. Now, if you really get down to it, folks, for the last 20 years, publishing The Free American, I have been the forefront of this whole guerrilla warfare. The Vietnamese culture, with an external locus of control predominating the people or the group, is more important than the individual, is the perfect mindset for guerrilla fighters. This could prove to be the American rebels' biggest challenge, because guerrilla warfare is not something that one does like driving over a speed bump. It's a way of life, a very hard life filled with misery, extreme sacrifices, and unspeakable losses. And that's actually a really good description of what has happened to me over the last 20 years. 10 years ago, 10 years into doing the Free American, setting up other businesses to help support it, like Arizona's Thunder Riders, I have been under constant attack. Canary in the coal mine, I told you. And now with Waco, getting worse. It's getting worse. Now they're going after the bikers. And just like the guns, you got a gun, you're a danger. You got a motorcycle, you're a danger. You're a danger. They're trying to press that into us. Despite that, listen to this. That's 2,500 Harley Davidsons on the streets of Washington, D.C. Memorial Day, on a Memorial Day weekend. Rolling Thunder, which I've been promoting for 20 years. I helped start that. Artie Mueller's still running it. And that just happened, and that happened a few days after they tried to demonize the bikers. I was with 100 bikers here in Big Springs at the Vietnam Vets Memorial. They were riding from California going to Washington, D.C. We were a halfway point. over 100 bikers. I just hope they didn't go by way of Waco, where now 170 bikers, whether they were club members or not, are being held on a $1 million bond. The police shot and killed all the bikers, and then they want to demonize the rest of the bikers. Now back to Dave Hodges. General Nugent Gap, GIAP, was the architect of the Viet Cong strategy. Hodges says, for my money, the best guerrilla fighters in their modern era were the Viet Cong, in which the Vietnamese people were involved in some sort of guerrilla war from 1942 to 1975. After the Americans invaded Vietnam, the forces of the North had a saying, born in the North, die in the South. There were nearly 2 generations of Vietnamese people in which war was an unavoidable part of life. Generations of the Vietnamese people in which war was an unavoidable part of life. What General Westmoreland and LBJ failed to recognize, and of course Lyndon Baines Johnson is the one who arranged for the killing of Kennedy so he could retract the U.S. dollars that Kennedy had issued with Executive Order 1110. What General Westmoreland and LBJ failed to recognize was in order to defeat and totally subdue the Vietnamese people, the Americans would have had to engage in unspeakable genocide. Despite the fact that the U.S. won every single battle in the war, the Vietnamese rebels were never going to give up. Do we Americans have that same tenacity to persevere like the Vietnamese? I don't believe so. I am really disappointed in Americans. No one, and including all your Alex Joneses out there, ever stepped forward to help me after they tried to kill me 10 years ago on May 20th, 2004. Prior to World War II, the guerrilla wars lasted an average of 7 years. Following World War II, guerrilla conflicts last on the average of 10 years. Will Americans embrace the tenets and sacrifices of the guerrilla war, and can it ever become a way of life? For this to happen, Hodges says, I believe that conditions would have to be unspeakably horrendous for America to embrace a conflict under these conditions. I think that things would have to be so bad, so completely genocidal, that fighting and dying would be the only viable alternative for America in order to embrace guerrilla warfare as a way of life. What I'm saying here is that we are a very soft people. However, Jade Helm, with the use of special operations forces designed to extract red-listed political dissidents, could push many Americans over the top. How close is the inevitable conflict? Successful guerrilla leaders such as Lawrence of Arabia, Mayo, Castro, Giap all concur that there are 3 phases of any guerrilla war. However, before the phase can unfold, there are 2 preconditions which must be met. The first condition, which is a prerequisite for guerrilla war, is based upon the fact that there has to be a decisive battle for the belief systems of the people as a whole. The globalists have invested billions of dollars in order to dominate the mainstream media. On the other side is the independent media, which most of you people won't help at all. You want it free? You want to hear the story for free, but you don't want to invest anything? You don't want to make a donation? You don't want to go to freeamerican.com and make a donation? I hope I run into you in those FEMA centers. I hope I get to look into your eyes and say, see what you let happen? Now, both sides are vying for control of the belief systems of this country. Winning the hearts and minds of the people is critical to success. The Viet Cong understood this principle, and the winner of the coming conflict is likely to be one that can apply this lesson of history to modern times. I'll be writing about that in books that they'll call science fiction. There are two very distinct ideologies playing out today in the court of public opinion. On one hand, the future rebels are adept at exposing the loss of national sovereignty and civil liberties every chance they get. Conversely, the globalist-dominated media is spending billions of dollars to convince the masses that there's no such thing as a conspiracy theory, and despite some governmental incompetence, the government loves and protects its people. And the globalists are being somewhat effective. Have you noticed? Have you ever noticed that when you are describing a globalist-inspired conspiracy, such as what happened at Benghazi, and no matter how well documented your position is, that your audience frequently responds to the globalist-created mantra, oh, you must be one of those conspiracy theorists, you must be anti-Semitic, you must be a racist. Our facts are rarely attacked because they're accurate, but the idea of the existence of any kind of conspiracy is what is challenged. This kind of programming, mostly coming from your television sets, is brilliant and effective. Who is winning this war of words? The jury's still out. But the unmistakable conclusion is that the ideological battle lines for the upcoming conflict have clearly been drawn. The globalists sell the sheep on the notion that we have to control you to protect you from a threat of our creation, and the other side is saying, we'll take our chances, give us freedom. Don't tread on me, the Gadsden flag. The second precondition, which must be met prior to descending into the guerrilla war, consists of both sides engaging in an arms race. In response to the Obama's administration threat of seizing our gun for the false flag events of the Aurora Batman massacre and Sandy Hook, Americans went on a gun buying frenzy which continues to this day. DHS has engaged in their own arms buildup as they have purchased 2.2 billion rounds of ammunition to go with the 2,700 new armored personnel carrier, and that's not all. The federal government has invested in 30,000 drones, super soldier robots, and intelligence gathering techniques which are mind-blowing. In summary, the American people and their government have engaged in an arms race very similar to nature to two rival countries preparing to go to war. The preconditions for armed conflict and the likelihood that conflict will be guerrilla is very likely, but whether the American people will tolerate total enslavement in lieu of rebellion is very much in doubt. Emerging from the discussion in the next part in this series is the discovery of a fact that there are three overlapping phases of guerrilla war, and it will be a shocking surprise to all of us as to how far along this country is in relation to these three phases. All that is needed is the right trigger event, i.e. Jade Helm extractions, and that'll be discussed in the next part as well.
under law. What is the sovereign law? David Whitney has a magnificent lecture on this subject. It's less than an hour long. I'd love to send you a CD with his lecture. Please send for it. The sovereignty CD. And write to us at Post Office Box 344, Nicomo, California 93444. That's PO Box 344, Nicomo, California 93444.
All right. Think there's a you don't believe there's a war on for us? Lance Corporal Monifa Sterling seems unbelievable. The plight of Lance Corporal Monifa seems unbelievable, but it's all disgustingly real. They say if you put a frog in the boiling water, it'll jump out. But if you put the same frog in cold water and gradually turn up the heat, it'll never jump out until it's too late and get cooked. Now that's exactly how the Obama administration is removing our freedoms one at a time, and he's been astonishingly successful. America in 2015 is a place where Jesus Christ and the Bible are considered hate speech, and the LGBT, that's a lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender agenda, is glorified. A place where everyone has rights except Bible-believing Christians, run by an administration that allows Iran to have nuclear weapons, but posting a Bible verse on your personal computer is illegal. America, the wolf is in the White House and you're losing the battle for your liberty. It's time to wake up or admit defeat. A United States Marine was convicted at a court-martial for refusing to remove a Bible verse on her computer. A verse of scripture the military determined could easily be seen as contrary to good order and discipline. This is a black Marine. She's a member of the armed forces criminally prosecuting for displaying a slightly altered passage of scripture from the Old Testament. No weapon formed against me shall prosper. Sterling, who represented herself at trial, was convicted on February 1st, 2014 in a court-martial at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, after she refused to obey orders from a staff sergeant to remove the Bible verses from her desk. She was found guilty of failing to go to her appointed... What did I do here? Sorry, just lost this. Found guilty of failing to go to her appointed place of duty, disrespect towards a commissioned officer, and four specific specifications of disobeying a lawful order of a non-commissioned officer. Both lower and appellate court ruled that the Religious Freedom Restoration Act did not apply to her case because displaying a Bible verse does not constitute religious exercise. However, a religious liberty law firm and a high-powered former U.S. solicitor have taken up her case, filed an appeal to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces. If a government can order a Marine not to display a Bible verse, they could try and order her not to get a religious tattoo or go to church. On Sunday, the Liberty Institute attorney Michael Berry said, restricting a Marine's free exercise of religion is blatantly unconstitutional. Sterling wised up, finally got legal counsel. Now representing her are the Liberty Institute, along with former U.S. Solicitor General Paul Clement, also a law professor at Georgetown University, Clement most recently won a Superior Court victory on behalf of Hobby Lobby against the Affordable Care Act. Now, Ronald Reagan warned us on the gradual creep of socialism. The Liberty Institute and Clement planned to argue that the appellate court should have applied the Religious Freedom Restoration Act in Sterling case, protecting her right to post Bible verses as a form of religious exercise. According to the appellate court's decision, they were not convinced that displaying religious text on a shared government workstation would be protected even in the civilian market federal workplace. They also considered the fact that Sterling's desk was shared by other Marines. The implication is clear. The junior Marine sharing the desk and the other Marines coming to the desk for assistance would be exposed to biblical quotations in the military workplace, the court declared. It's not hard to imagine the divisive impact to good order and discipline that may result when a service member is compelled to work at a government desk festooned with religious quotations. Festooned with religious quotations. Attorney Berry points out that other Marines were allowed to decorate their desk. However, the lower courts refused to allow that evidence to be admitted. At the time of the incident, Sterling was not sharing the desk. There was a conflict between her and her supervisor, whose supervisor clearly said she did not like the tone of the Bible verses. Berry said the supervisor cursed at Sterling and ordered her to immediately remove the verses. She refused the order. The next day, she discovered the verses had been removed and thrown in the trash can. Adding insult to injury, the government charged them with the crime of failing to obey a direct order because she did not remove the Bible verse, Berry said. According to court documents, the military maintains the verbiage, "No weapon formed against me shall prosper," could easily been seen as contrary to good order and discipline. Maintaining discipline and morale in the military work center could very well require that the work center remain relatively free of divisive or contentious issues such as personal beliefs, religion, politics, etc. Liberty Institute attorney Hiram Sasser told me it was outrageous that such a small strip of paper could so frighten a drill sergeant. This is a very scary time when you're not allowed to have a small printed Bible verse in your own personal workspace because it might offend other Marines, Sasser told me. Our Marines are trained to deal with some of the most hostile people on the planet. I don't think they're afraid of tiny words on a tiny piece of paper. Reagan warned us about Obama, but we didn't listen. The Bible verse incident happened in May of 2013. A few months later, she was accused of failing to wear an appropriate uniform because of a medical condition. Berry told me he believes the military was trumping up the charge sheet to make it look that things were worse than they were. As it now stands, Sterling is unemployed, looking for work. It's a process made harder because of the bad conduct discharged from the military. Hopefully, Liberty Institute will be able to restore this Christian Marine's good name and expunge the charges. Anything less could jeopardize the standing of every person of faith serving in the armed forces. All right, let's see what else is happening on this front. Contact us requested. Okay, what is that? Nothing here. And by the way, folks, I do have my phone numbers, I have my email, and I request that you contact me. Tell me what you know. Tell me what you can do. We need to be able to work together. This is from the Constitution Club. This just came in. This is entitled The Story of Your Enslavement, and this is what I've been trying to tell you for a long period of time. The story of your enslavement. Let's see what this is.
This is the story of your enslavement. How it came to be, and how you can finally be free. Like all animals, human beings want to dominate and exploit the resources around them. At first we mostly hunted and fished and ate off the land, but then something magical and terrible happened to our minds. We became, alone among the animals, afraid of death and of future loss. And this was the start of a great tragedy and an even greater possibility. You see, when we become afraid of death, of injury and imprisonment, we become controllable and so valuable in a way that no other resource could ever be. The greatest resource for any human being to control is not natural resources or tools or animals or land, but other human beings. You can frighten an animal because animals are afraid of pain in the moment, but you cannot frighten an animal with a loss of liberty, with torture or imprisonment in the future, because animals have very little sense of tomorrow. You cannot threaten a cow with torture or a sheep with death. You cannot swing a sword at a tree and scream at it to produce more fruit, or hold a burning torch to a field and demand more wheat. You cannot get more eggs by threatening a hen, but you can get a man to give you his eggs by threatening him. This human farming has been the most profitable and destructive occupation throughout history, and it is now reaching its destructive climax. Human society cannot be rationally understood until it is seen for what it is: a series of farms where human farmers own human livestock. Some people get confused because governments provide healthcare and water and education and roads, and thus imagine that there is some benevolence at work. Nothing could be further from the reality. Farmers provide healthcare and irrigation and training to their livestock. Some people get confused because we are allowed certain liberties and thus imagine that our governments protect our freedoms. But farmers plant their crops a certain distance apart to increase their yields, and will allow certain animals larger stalls or fields if it means they will produce more meat and milk. In your country, your tax farm, your farmer grants you certain freedoms, not because he cares about your liberties, but because he wants to increase his profits. Are you beginning to see the nature of the cage you were born into? There have been four major phases of human farming. The first phase in ancient Egypt was direct and brutal human compulsion. Human bodies were controlled, but the creative productivity of the human mind remained beyond the reach of the whip and the brand and the shackles. Slaves remained woefully underproductive and required enormous resources to control. The second phase was the Roman model, wherein slaves were granted some capacity for freedom, ingenuity, and creativity, which raised their productivity. This increased the wealth of Rome, and thus the tax income of the Roman government, and with this additional wealth, Rome became an empire, destroying the economic freedoms that fed its power, and collapsed. I'm sure that this does not seem entirely unfamiliar. After the collapse of Rome, the feudal model introduced the concept of livestock ownership and taxation. Instead of being directly owned, peasants farmed land that they could retain as long as they paid off the local warlords. This model eventually broke down due to the continual subdivision of productive land and was destroyed during the enclosure movement when land was consolidated and hundreds of thousands of peasants were kicked off their ancestral lands because new farming techniques made larger farms more productive with fewer people. The increased productivity of the later Middle Ages created the excess food required for the expansion of towns and cities, which in turn gave rise to the modern democratic model of human ownership. As displaced peasants flooded into the cities, a huge stock of cheap human capital became available to the rising industrialists. And the ruling class of human farmers quickly realized that they could make more money by letting their livestock choose their own occupations. Under the democratic model, direct slave ownership has been replaced by the mafia model. The mafia rarely owns businesses directly, but rather sends thugs around once a month to steal from the business owners. You are now allowed to choose your own occupation, which raises your productivity, and thus the taxes you can pay to your masters.
Value this time in your life, kids, because this is the time in your life when you still have your choices. It goes by so fast. When you're a teenager, you think you can do anything, and you do. Your 20s are a blur. 30s, you raise your family, you make a little money, and you think to yourself, what happened to my 20s? 40s, you grow a little pot belly, you grow another chin. The music starts to get too loud. One of your old girlfriends from high school becomes a grandmother. 50s, you have a minor surgery. You'll call it a procedure, but it's a surgery. 60s, you'll have a major surgery. The music is still loud, but it doesn't matter because you can't hear it anyway. 70s, you and the wife retire to Fort Lauderdale. Start eating dinner at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You have lunch around 10, breakfast the night before. Spend most of your time wandering around malls looking for the ultimate soft yogurt and muttering, how come the kids don't call? How come the kids don't call? The 80s, you'll have a major stroke. You end up battling with some Jamaican nurse your wife can't stand, but who you call mama. Any questions?
Your few freedoms are preserved because they are profitable to your owners. The great challenge of the democratic model is that increases in wealth and freedom threaten the farmers. The ruling classes initially profit from a relatively free market in capital and labor, but as their livestock become more used to their freedoms and growing wealth, they begin to question why they need rulers at all. Ah well, nobody ever said that human farming was easy. Keeping the taxed livestock securely in the compounds of the ruling classes is a three-phase process. The first is to indoctrinate the young through government, quote, education. As the wealth of democratic countries grew, government schools were universally inflicted in order to control the thoughts and souls of the livestock. The second phase is to turn citizens against each other through the creation of dependent livestock. It is very difficult to rule human beings directly through force, and where it can be achieved, it remains cripplingly underproductive, as can be seen in North Korea. Human beings do not breed well or produce efficiently in direct captivity. But if human beings believe that they are free, then they will produce much more for their farmers. The best way to maintain this illusion of freedom is to put some of the livestock on the payroll of the farmer. Those cows that become dependent on the existing hierarchy will then attack any other cows who point out the violence, hypocrisy, and immorality of human ownership.
Officers positioned Grant face first on the floor with one officer near his head, a second near his back, and a third officer standing nearby. There appeared to be a brief struggle. Then, a 2-year veteran BART officer stands, draws his weapon, and fires.
Freedom is slavery, and slavery is freedom. If you can get the cows to attack each other whenever anybody brings up the reality of their situation, then you don't have to spend nearly as much controlling them directly. Those cows who become dependent upon the stolen largesse of the farmer will violently oppose any questioning of the virtue of human ownership, and the intellectual and artistic classes, always and forever dependent upon the farmers, will say to anyone who demands freedom from ownership, "You will harm your fellow cows." The livestock are thus kept enclosed by shifting the moral responsibility for the destructiveness of the violent system to those who demand real freedom. The third phase is to invent continual external threats so that the frightened livestock cling to the protection of the farmers.
ISIS is coming, ISIS is
This system
coming.
of human farming is now nearing its end. The terrible tragedies of modern Western economic systems has occurred not in spite of, but because of past economic freedoms. The massive increases in Western wealth throughout the 19th century resulted from economic freedoms. And it was this very increase in wealth that fed the size and power of the state. Whenever the livestock become exponentially more productive, you get a corresponding increase in the number of farmers and their dependents. The growth of the state is always proportional to the preceding economic freedoms. Economic freedoms create wealth, and the wealth attracts more thieves and political parasites, whose greed then destroys the economic freedoms. In other words, freedom metastasizes the cancer of the state. The government that starts off the smallest will always end up the largest. This is why there can be no viable and sustainable alternative to a truly free and peaceful society. A society without political rulers, without human ownership, without the violence of taxation and statism. To be truly free is both very easy and very hard. We avoid the horror of our enslavement because it is so painful to see it directly. We dance around the endless violence of our dying system because we fear the attacks of our fellow livestock. But we can only be kept in the cages we refuse to see. Wake up.
Wake up. See the farm.
Is to leave it.
Is to leave it. All right, one more thing here. We're going to give you a little insight here. Believe I've got this up on my Facebook page. It's nearly impossible for most to conduct a mental vote-face, let alone a physical one, particularly when one's mindset is set in stone. In actuality, hell will freeze over before a paradigm shift takes place. Consequently, if one stubbornly clings to the belief that a commander-in-chief is de facto a patriot, thus any evidence to the contrary becomes DOA. Similarly, in relation to top-level military brass, many are equally blinded because of a perceived factor of patriotism. You know, all the men with puffed-up chests and pinned medals, as if it means a damn without true national ethos. Alas, when it comes to the traitor-in-chief, it has become crystal clear that he is a rogue and renegade leader, yet still, in order to implement said national destruction, it becomes imperative to purge those military leaders who remain loyal to their constitutional oath, as opposed to an enemy agent, POTUS. If said booting doesn't signify what's on tap, little will convince the naysayers. So it is under this reality-based umbrella that Jade Helm 15 must be judged, regardless of any and all mouthpieces and apologies sent forth via Obama Incorporated. Listen up. This is what went on in Big Spring in the council meeting. How many times does it need to be stated a domestic war will be thrust upon the citizens under the instigation of Hussein Obama? Sooner than later, patriots must be prepared or armed.
I just want to be able thank you all for allowing me to speak tonight to the City Council of Big Spring. This is an honor for us to be here to address you and give you some information on the exercise that we'll be conducting this summer in Howard County. My name's Tom Mead. I'm a retired Special Forces Senior Non-Commissioned Officer. I spent 20 years in the Army. I spent 13 with Special Operations. I'm currently a contractor working for United States Army Special Operations Command as an operations planner and an exercise designer for the Jade Helm project. With me this evening I have Master Sergeant Tim Robinson. He's an active duty Green Beret with 3rd Special Forces Group out of Fort Bragg. Tim's helping us design this exercise to get it going, make sure it goes in the right direction. So my purpose here this evening is we are seeking written invitation and approval from local officials to conduct the realistic military training exercise within the jurisdiction of the city of Big Spring. Through the process, we're required, as what I'm here tonight, is to receive to ask for a letter of invitation from local officials, inviting us into your community to allow us to train our soldiers for the next fight that they could encounter. We're not training for Afghanistan and Iraq, the things that we've done in the last 15 years. We're looking forward, and we want to make sure that these guys are trained properly. This is where we need the help of the local communities. We coordinate with all the local, state, and federal law enforcement. We've already been and we've coordinated with the police chief here in Big Spring. We've coordinated with Sheriff Parker already. We have coordinated up at DPS at the state level already. So everybody from a law enforcement aspect understands what the exercise is, and we want to make sure that we are completely plugged in with them to make sure they understand what's going on. The land use agreements that we do with the local public, we don't just come in to somebody's property, and we won't trespass on somebody's property without the agreement of that landowner. The licensing agreement truly allows us, or it releases liability from the landowner. And we do a full risk assessment and medical plan. We've already linked in with the hospital. We understand how they get the life flight. We also have medical personnel that will be on site to assist should anything happen.
Hello.
What is Jade Helm? Jade Helm
Yes,
is
ma'am.
a challenging 8-week exercise. Truly,
Yes, ma'am, you got him. I will pick that up, ma'am. I'll see you in a few. Thank you. Bye-bye. All right, we're back here. We're listening here to the City Council meeting on Jade Helm here.
Bulk of the activity, I would tell you, and we are spread
Let me go
from
back just a little
east
bit
to
here.
west, north to south,
Let me show you
throughout
what
the
he's
state.
saying.
Somebody from a
This
law
is the
enforcement
planner here.
aspect understands what the exercise is, and we want to make sure that we are completely plugged in with them to make sure they understand what's going on. The land use agreements that we do with the local public, we don't just come in to somebody's property and we won't trespass on somebody's property without the agreement of that landowner. The licensing agreement truly allows us, or it releases liability from the landowner. And we do a full risk assessment and medical plan. We've already linked in with the hospital. We understand how they get the life flight. We also have medical personnel that will be on site to assist should anything happen. What is Jade Helm? Jade Helm is a challenging 8-week exercise. Truly, in this area, in the Martin and Howard County area, we're only going to be here for about 5 to 5.5 weeks. The 8 weeks comes in where it's the preparation and the planning that happens back in Florida and in the Mississippi area. The exercise is a joint military and interagency activity. What this means is we have we have units from every military service participating in the exercise with us. And we also have some of our interagency partners, such as the FBI, the DEA, and some of the other agencies assisting us and working with us in the exercise. The exercise is going to be throughout 7 states. Texas is the main bulk of the activity, I would tell you. And we are spread from east to west, north to south, throughout the state of Texas. It is a Special Operations Command General Votel sponsored exercise to improve Special Operations Forces' ability to conduct unconventional warfare as part of the national security. The exercise will occur from July to September. What we see here in Martin and Howard County is the guys will come in about August 7th or so, and they'll depart somewhere about September 10th or so. Who's participating? As you can see, it's all of our special operators. United States Army Special Forces Command, the Green Berets. Navy SEALs will be conducting operations over in Mississippi and Louisiana. The Air Force Special Operations Command will be flying specialty aircraft for us for infiltration and resupply of the operators on the ground. The Marine Special Operators will be working down in the San Antonio area. The 82nd Airborne Division will jump an entire battalion into Camp Bullis and take down targets inside Camp Bullis on a federal installation. The exercise locations in this area, we're working throughout Martin and Howard County. We've already, as some of you know, we briefed the Howard County Commissioner's Court yesterday morning. We received approval to operate within Howard County. Why did we choose Texas? Number one, United States Special Operations Command has been conducting exercises in Texas for a few years. We've done numerous exercises here. A lot of times you don't hear a lot about it unless someone like me comes to brief you about those exercises. And we know that Texans are historically supportive of our efforts to make sure that our soldiers, sailors, and airmen and Marines are ready to fight that next fight and train them for that next fight. Some of the things that we require is areas of undeveloped land with low population densities. United States Army Special Operations Command, being the director of the exercise, desires to have a very rural area for us to be able to operate in. Because the last few years, these guys have, in Afghanistan and Iraq, they receive aerial resupply by helicopter about once a week. They live in buildings. They have connectivity to the internet to be able to talk to their command, but also be able to talk to home. When they come out here to Martin and Howard County, they're not going to have those luxuries. In the scenario that we've built, they're going to have to operate outside of those normal support mechanisms and rely on the folks, the civilians that are in the area to be able to support them. We have a backside support element that actually will replicate that, but we also ask for, we can't do the exercise without the public's help. Things that we look for from that perspective is we look for people that are willing to be a role player, to just be someone who goes and gives a little nugget of information for them to build an intelligence picture, to understand the scenario better and be able to operate better. We look for people that are willing to transport our guys because they have to move around in a clandestine manner. For example, in the back of a horse trailer in the middle of the night so nobody can see them. These are ways that they have to operate in foreign countries and when they're not supposed to be in those countries. We also look for landowners and business owners who would be willing to allow us to, on a landowner perspective, to be able to use their land, maybe live on their land, or to use a barn or an old barn to be able to conduct a meeting in the middle of the night for them to do planning with a higher command element. Shop owners to be able to use a back storeroom or a warehouse to do these types of meetings as well. They have to be, they operate in and around communities because that's the way we operate throughout the globe. Ordinary citizens are the first ones to notice something that's different. And that, you know, it causes them to have to be that much more careful. What can you expect? Now, understand that this slideshow is our standard slideshow that we use to brief the counties and the cities. Within the cities, you won't see most of this, I would tell you. For example, increased aircraft in the area at night. You'll see that out in the rural area. We have a resupply, an aerial drop that will occur, and then some paratroopers as well will jump into Martin County in early August. It won't happen within the city limits. But one of the most important things, and I know I've said it previously, is we link in with the law enforcement officers. They know when and where we're conducting activity. That way we actually invite the police department to be near the activity. That way they're able to answer constituent calls on that. The other thing that we do is we brief that prior to the activity going on. That way the police chief can let the dispatch know that this is occurring, so that when they field phone calls from concerned citizens, they're able to meet that off or cut that off at the pass. But that's not normally anything that's out of the ordinary in West Texas from what I've seen, especially during hunting season. And they may be driving civilian vehicles throughout the area. So really, within the city limits, if you notice my guys, they're probably really doing something wrong. Clear marking of the participants. That, for us, that's one of the big things. We make sure that all of our guys have some type of marking that they'll all be wearing an armband with a marking that identifies them as part of the exercise. So if and what I mean by that is, just as we do with the law enforcement, if there's activity occurring around an area, we will actually go out to doors and knock on doors introduce ourselves and let them know that there'll be activity happening between this time and this time.
Mr. Meade, how often do you do a operation like this? Is this done annually or?
Yes, sir. So the Jade Helm project is a new project that has come along from General Cleveland, from his staff at United States Army Special Operations Command. This exercise is planned to be conducted yearly. We conduct an exercise that's similar to this, and I say similar because the scope and the breadth of the exercise is nowhere comparable to what we do here. But they conduct that exercise 6 times a year in North Carolina. So, did I answer your question, sir?
Sure.
Yes, sir.
I was just had a couple of questions. And you've already started talking to the landowners and
Yes, sir.
setting things up. I just have to ask, how does FBI and DEA work with the military on the operation like this?
Well, generally speaking, sir, the FBI and DEA provide us liaison officers up at our command level, depending on how the scenario is written. One of the ways the FBI and DEA are working with us here is in Arizona. They will actually do some questioning for us at one of the airports in Arizona. In Arizona, they will actually do some questioning for us at one of the airports in Arizona.
Do y'all use any personnel from NATO, UN, or
No, sir,
DHS?
Currently for Jade Helm, it is U.S. only. We that has been one of the discussions that I'm not sure if it has occurred yet, but we that has been one of the discussions that I'm not sure if it has occurred yet, but that I'm not sure if it has occurred yet, but.
Name, please. About 3 minutes. We got a lot of speakers.
My name's Kimberly York, and I actually am one of the county residents, and I'm a little distressed with the fact, A, the county issued an invitation without letting the citizens know that it's going on in the county. I think that we should have been informed. I feel like it's being hidden from us about, and then all of a sudden an invitation's issued and it's on us. And I'm a little bit concerned about that. I think as citizens we have the right. I also am a hospice nurse. I have a lot of concerns about our elderly population in this county and in this city by things that are going on and being distressed. It may double our phone calls for home healths and hospices because we will be the first persons they call and get distressed. What the press is putting out is really different than what we're seeing here today. The press is telling us, oh, you're not going to hear about it, you're not going to see it, it's just not going to affect your lives. Well, what we're reading here is that it might affect our lives. And I think as citizens of this county, we should have a voice in whether that invitation is issued. I've got some, like I said, some real concerns. There's safeties for civilians. Why are we looking at safety issues if there's nothing to see here right now? By the way, I am a military brat. I do support the military. I feel that there's other ways of training than inflicting it on the citizens of this county. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That was I assumed that was the first Jade Helm meeting after they were invited in here. That took place at the city council. All right. Yes, ma'am. Lynn, you can make a suggestion. Go right ahead. All right. Looking at the chat room here. Sister Lynn wants to make a suggestion. There she goes. Now she's typing it in. Welcome back, Sons of Hemp. I'm assuming you might be in Colorado there. And we've got somebody on the hemp relation that somebody asked me to play this. We've got a few minutes left here. Let's play a little short one. Let's see what this is. Somebody sent it to me. All right. Well, that was so-so. Alright, no, I'm not doing that one here. Let's see here, what else we got. We've got about 8 minutes left here, 7 minutes. And we've done the Jade Helms. Now, we're in a domestic war signed for, in this regard, to accomplish martial law. The confiscation of legal guns is top their to-do list. Urgently onto the general spilled beans. Yesterday, the writer says, I was fortunate enough to speak to the Chino Valley, Arizona chapter of the Oath Keepers. I came away convinced that I shared a room for 90 minutes with people who grasped the importance of the times that we're living in. And these former law enforcement and military personnel are dedicated to convincing today's Leos and military to not take up arms against the American people in order to do so, or if ordered to do so. I am further convinced that we are beginning to enter a period of time where some of the military are questioning their military mission regarding Jade Helm, which means after months of keeping our collective journalistic eye on the ball, the work is beginning to pay off. I've been telling many colleagues in the independent media that I fully expect to start hearing from people in more of an official capacity when it comes to Jade Helm, because Jade Helm is anti-American, illegal in its execution, and absolutely evil in its intent. I know there will be a time when most American soldiers will collectively say enough is enough. I've heard from many members of the Michigan Reservists and National Guard that are questioning their mission in relation to Jade Helm. I get the occasional email from family members of military personnel from around the country who are concerned about the direction our military is being taken. My military sources have confirmed that key members of the Jade Helm leadership are growing concerned because they are not entirely certain of their mission goals because their participation is so heavily compartmentalized. But until yesterday, I have not heard from a person in a command position or a recent command position who is expressing concerns over Jade Helm and what will follow these drills. This is the story of one leader, and here's up close and personal view of what lies ahead, and this message should scare the life out of every American. The Lieutenant General speaks out. On the morning of May 23rd, I was sent an email communication from a man claiming to be a recently retired Lieutenant General who was forced to retire in an Obama purge of military leadership in which the President has fired 270 command military leaders. He provided me with identifying clues so I could verify his identity, which I subsequently did. As a quality control check, I ran the same information by my two primary military sources. Both sources independently told me they do indeed know both the identity of this individual and his former role and function in the military. Back in November of 2012, when I broke the news about the attempted soft military coup In regard to the Benghazi story, I hesitated to publish my information for 10 days because I did not have outside collaboration for what I was being told. I almost lost my source as a result of my hesitation. As it turned out, on this November 3, 2012 article, I was 3 months ahead of many outlets because the source was so controversial that many backed away from the topic. However, my information about the soft coup was connected to the attempted rescue of Ambassador Stevens has proven to be accurate. I will not make the same mistake I did with the Ambassador Stevens story. The Lieutenant General's information is important and time sensitive. With his identity validated and confirmed, here is his message about the present national crisis connected to Jade Helm. From the Lieutenant General. In 2012, this Lieutenant General was part of a Pentagon study which studied how many military personnel would side with the government and how many could be counted upon to fire upon American citizens when ordered to do so. The 2012 Pentagon study reached the following conclusions. Approximately 60% of active duty military personnel will side with the American people. 80% of the National Guard will not fire upon American citizens when, as Lieutenant General said, not if, but when the order is given to openly enslave the American people under martial law. Somewhere around 90% of the Marines will side with the American people. The Navy as a whole will stay out of the fight, choosing to be the last line of defense against foreign intervention should the country fall into civil war. And please refer to my previous reference to the fact that the Navy is engaged in 5 years of war games in order to keep most of its ships out to sea. It's widely believed that in excess of 75% of the Air Force will side with the establishment. The Lieutenant General identified 3 emerging sides in this conflict. There will be those that will support the establishment, those that oppose the establishment, and those who do not take sides, but instead will choose to protect civilians, presumably friends and family. In his email to me, the General stated, with regard to Russian troops on American soil, there are many active military, both officers, senior NCOs, who see what is happening and what is coming. More than you can possibly imagine will not follow an unconstitutional order to move against the American people, nor will they allow foreign troops to openly attack American citizens. This should be at the start of the fight. Those foreign forces could not possibly win, as we will be fighting for our families, home and country and freedom. Russian forces currently on American soil have no stomach for a fight with the American people. I know because I speak fluent Russian. I have met them and many of their officers. When push comes to a shove, they will stand down and go home. I have met President Putin. I found him to be a nationalist, a man that believes in Russia. And while he's interested in expanding Russian influence and power, it's because of the threat he sees from America, England, and NATO, not because he has designs on taking over America. The Lieutenant General's notion that the Russians will stand down is interesting and foreign to my previous thought on the subject, and all of the content expressed to me in his email. This will undoubtedly prove to be the most controversial. During the course of the email, the Lieutenant General briefly summarized what he anticipated would be coming as a result of major portions of the U.S. military refusing to participate in subjugation of the American people by force. He offered the following. With modern anti-aircraft system, mobile and man-portable air power will be all but useless. What we will see is a ground war, city by city, street by street. Additionally, what is coming will be unlike any civil war in history. It will be very personal. The government will call the Patriot forces terrorists and traitors. They will arrest, intern, torture, murder suspected terrorist families. This will result in bloody reprisals, which will start a vicious cycle lasting for years. This is certainly not the future we hope and pray that our children will build for themselves. However, I wrote something similar regarding the nature of the coming Civil War almost 2 years ago which I was going to republish with some updated information. This is a future which I fear, and as a person who espouses nonviolence as a means to solve our differences, I'm not supporting of a civil war. However, my permission will not be required when the shooting starts. God bless you. Make a donation, freeamerican.com. Thank you. God bless you all.